Kim Min-Seo sat quietly, strumming her fingers on her knee as she listened to the news anchor chatter on about another death at the hands of the Dracula Killer. She'd heard all the news she needed to. It had been 3 weeks or so since the first killings had started, and the city was in a panic. Mayor Jonathan Flowers had assured the community he was doing everything in his power to catch the vigilante, and that was what she was doing in the captain's office right now. Captain Owen Brown sat at the desk looking at the screen as the mayor delivered his address to the news reporters.
It is a disgrace that some lunatic could run unchecked in our city, killing anyone he sees fit. I'm making it a top priority to catch and arrest this man, whoever he is. The police are organizing a team specifically for doing just that.
Mr. Mayor, do you think that there's any validity to this Dracula Killer? Could he be something supernatural or...
Amanda, as a competent journalist, I believe you know the answer to that question. This man or woman, whoever they are, is nothing more than a killer. He or she can call themselves what they like, but at the end of the day, a criminal is a criminal.
What about the fact that he's been targeting only mobsters, drug lords, and rapists? Do you think he's trying to be a vigilante?
Well, my grandfather used to say that people who truly care about a community don't break the rules of that community to protect it.
That's enough of that, the captain groaned, cutting off the TV. He spun around in his chair to look at Kim, and he snorted disapprovingly.
What do you want to talk to me about, Detective? We've got a team briefing in 5 minutes.
Sir, with all due respect, why do you want me on this team?
You're a damn fine detective with a good record. Besides, you mentioned you read Dracula in high school, right?
Well, yes, sir, along with everyone else in my English class, and I'm sure there are other officers who've read it too.
Are you saying you don't want to be on the team? Captain Brown asked, standing up to grab his coat off the rack. It was getting late, and he was itching to go home after the briefing.
No, I'm fine with being on the Dracula Killer team, so long as I get some things cleared up. I just want to make sure I'm here for the right reason, sir.
Meaning? Captain Brown's eyebrows pushed together in the way they do when he was frustrated. He didn't like being questioned, especially by Detective Kim Min-Seo.
Sir, if this is some kind of test...
Look, the mayor is up my ass about this Dracula Killer, and he expects results fast. I don't have time to worry about pointless family drama or tests or whatever you... He softened a little. Trust me, this has nothing to do with your big brother, the captain sneered. But if it bothers you that much, I can take you off the case right now and put you back behind a desk.
No, sir, that's not what I want. I want this, she replied with a stern and approving look. The captain nodded gruffly.
Good. Then shut up and let's get to this briefing.
As he walked by, Kim stiffened slightly and followed the captain out into the large and bustling office space that was the precinct. Sitting around waiting were about 10 or 12 other officers and detectives who had been asked to work the Dracula Killer case. Kim knew a handful of them, but some weren't part of this precinct. As the captain stood in front of the group putting on his jacket, he cleared his throat, waiting for Kim to take her seat.
It's late, so let's make this quick, he called out. The mayor's twisting the commissioner's arm, and so he's twisting mine too. We're to catch the Dracula Killer as soon as possible and by any means legally applicable. As for what we know, the Dracula Killer only seems to target criminals and dangerous felons. Normally, I might be tempted to shake the bastard's hand for that, right before I slap a pair of cuffs on him. This got a buzz of laughter from the listening police. The fact remains that while in this city, you don't take the law into your own hands, undead or otherwise.
What evidence have we seen that he is a vampire?
One cop asked, raising his hand. None, because he isn't, the chief snapped back.
But, sir, isn't it true that several of his victims had been drained of blood prior to being killed?
I also heard about some survivors claiming he was made of shadows or something.
One even swore it was a giant bat.
Enough! Captain Brown shouted. Rumor doesn't mean shit to me, and the evidence concerning blood loss is not enough to convince me of anything. It's always possible he drains the victim's blood ritualistically in order to sell the world on his Dracula persona. Maybe you all forgot that we're cops. Our job is to seek the truth through evidence, not through rumors. The room nodded their agreement, and Kim went on watching. But see, that's not what worries me. What worries me is how this vigilante is getting his hands on the names of his targets. He doesn't just know who they are. He knows their hideouts, their warehouses, where to hit them, where it hurts. He's got intel. Intel that could only be found by us, which means we may have a mole in our midst.
Kim tensed up a little as a few eyes glanced in her direction. She wasn't too surprised by this, given what happened with her family only a few years ago. She tried to ignore them and focus on the chief, who hadn't even glanced at her, though he seemed to sense the unease.
Now, I chose this team, Captain Brown continued, because I trust you. All of you.
Now his eyes shot toward her for a second.
I've gone through all your files, your case records, and your experience. You're all exemplary officers with good records. No one in this briefing is the mole, I'm sure of that. But because we might have one somewhere in the police force, everything we talk about in these meetings is to be kept in-house. You can't discuss this with your partners, with your local COs, not even with your families if you can avoid it.
As the night began to sink in outside, an ominous glow seemed to settle down in the precinct.
Now, tomorrow, I'll start assigning specific tasks for all of you, and before you leave, I'll be giving each of you a copy of the case file with all evidence and information we've gathered on this Dracula Killer. Read it and get familiar with it. I want this bastard caught by month's end. Any questions?
Yeah, think it's the real deal, sir?
Anyone can borrow a name and claim they're something they aren't, the captain snapped. Just last week, we bagged Jesus Christ himself for heroin possession. I'm sure when I go to church this Sunday, he won't be in attendance.
The whole room burst into laughter. The chief didn't speak until the room had settled down.
This animal gets his publicity and fame off of his name, so don't go buying into it.
Just to clarify, sir, Kim finally grumbled, do you want us to take out crime lords and stake out mob bosses to ensure their safety?
Is this assignment leaving a bitter taste in your mouth, Detective Min? He asked.
Kim just shook her head and looked away.
We protect the public, even if certain members of the public are reprehensible. Now, does anyone have a problem with that? No, sir, the room echoed. Good. That's what I like to hear. Now, the next item on the...
He paused as his phone suddenly rang. He lifted it up to see the caller ID, and his eyes narrowed, putting it away.
It's nothing important, he muttered. Speaking of phones, it's important that everyone here exchange numbers so we can keep in constant communication. The key to finding this guy is to make sure that our intel is airtight and out of his reach, so we must stay up to date with each other at... God damn it! His phone rang again and he lifted it up. I'm sorry, apparently I'm getting calls from an out-of-area number and I'm about to give them a piece of my mind. We'll pick up tomorrow. All information on your case files are in the back by the door. Good night and stay safe. Meet here at 9 o'clock tomorrow. As the room began to disperse, the captain was cursing under his breath about calls from unknown caller IDs and the pointlessness of telemarketers. Kim stood silently, walking to him before he could return the call. Sir? What is it, Min? He asked quickly before searching for the number.
I know I haven't exactly been private about my feelings of this matter, but you really think I'm not the mole?
My hope, Detective Min, is that the mole will seek you out specifically because of your feelings on this matter. You might have some unsavory outlooks on this case, and I can't exactly blame you for that, but you're a good cop with good instincts. You'll do the right thing in the end. Now, if you don't mind, I'm about to chew out this little dipshit.
Thank you, sir. Kim sighed, a little relieved to hear that. Perhaps she was only being used to bait out the mole, but at least her being on this team wasn't out of favor for her brother. That at least put her mind and heart at ease. Kim turned to leave as she heard the captain raise the phone to his ear to start screaming at the telemarketer. She hurried out. She didn't want to hear him start cursing out some poor guy just doing his job. You piece of shit! I have half a mind to find out who hired you and have them all... Oh, it's you, sir. I didn't mean to yell at you. I'm sorry, sir. Detective Kim smiled to herself. Sounded like he'd accidentally called the commissioner. Didn't matter. It wasn't her problem anyway. She walked on home, thinking to herself what kind of task she'd be given the next day, and how on earth they were going to ever start trying to find the Dracula Killer.